Hi everyone, and welcome to another live Q&A. My name is Cedric Marin, and I'm an immigration lawyer at Hof Immigration Law. And today, I'm going to be taking your questions live about how to immigrate to Canada. So here we're talking about express entry, we're talking about work permits, we're talking about immigration to Canada. Now, already some questions from Ida and Haydar. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me. Before we start, I just want to let you know, as usual, this is just legal information. So I don't actually provide any case-specific advice. I'm not going to make any recommendations. I don't know all the facts of your scenario, but what I try to do is really help you. So I try to pull up the IRCC instructions, the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, or the regulations, and talk about what may be relevant for you and what you can do for further research. We are a law firm called Hof Immigration Law, so head on over to our website called HOLTHE. Is also a link in the description called Hof Immigration Law. You can go ahead here and technical issues. Great. Just one moment. All right, I hope this is better, guys. I think I have one of these faulty little connectors that I'm using, this USB-C to USB-B, and I think it's been the source of all my technical problems over the last few weeks. So I had a consult where my keyboard was freezing up. I had a consult where I was having all these issues. Thanks so much, Haydar. Thanks so much, Ida. Thanks so much, Monsoon. I'm just going to repeat what I said. I don't know how much got through, but it's just legal information, right? So not legal advice. I'm not giving you any specific, advice, do this or do that. I don't know all the facts of your case, and I don't want to make a mistake. What I try to do is really point us to, the rules, the regulations, talk about, the ministerial instructions, express entry and whatnot. That is really what I'm trying to do, so you can go ahead and do your own research and look into what applies to you. Now, I was just saying, when I stopped saying, keep in mind we're an immigration law firm. I'm an immigration lawyer licensed in Ontario, and we only do immigration law. So Hof Immigration Law is our law firm, and you have tons of information here about legal help, business immigration, and whatnot. Speak to a lawyer, and then here we can speak to us about how to immigrate to Canada. I'm lower here at the bottom. So there we have it. We're going to start just super briefly, guys. I just developed these huge blogs here in our legal help called What is a Misrepresentation? So misrepresentation applies to a whole bunch of different areas, permanent residency, work permits, visitor visas, and it's not only providing false information, it's not only misleading information, but can also apply in some scenarios where you're withholding information. So you think that you don't have to declare your current education because you think it's going to increase the chance of a study permit. You don't want to declare your work experience because you think that it's going to delay your application for various reasons. So take a look at what is a misrepresentation. It applies to every single application. It's extremely detailed. It was about 12,000 words, these 5 different blogs just before putting them on our website. Now we have legal aspects of misrepresentation. So here for your DYIers, those who really want to know more about where does misrepresentation come from, we have here all the different sections, the relevant sections, and we talk here about specific case law. Some of this was posted at the last Q&A, but here I actually share tips about how to avoid a misrepresentation. Obviously, be truthful, don't hide any information, right? Provide letters of explanation. But anyways, tons of new content on misrepresentation. So if you have a pending application, you want to apply to Canada, this is super, super important because it can lead to a 5-year ban. Now, let's get right to it. Let's take your questions live. Again, general information. If you want legal advice and speak with me, go ahead and book a consult. So when will express entry targeted draws start? So I got an excellent question. Mark did a whole video on this yesterday, about an hour and a half. And what we do know is that they are currently exploring different ways, different knocks, different ways that they're going to do a specific knock. So take a look here on our YouTube channel. Go here, share the screen, and there's a whole area. I usually see mistakes here under videos, where we talk more about. Guys, where is it? I mean, it must be this. There we go. Here it is. Sorry, guys. The new Express Entry changes. So Mark actually goes into great detail about this. So do take a look. Do take a look on the new Express Entry System 2.0 and how it's going to change. Now, I did answer your question. We do know that they're aiming for spring 2023. But if you've been following immigration, spring 2023 could be the very last day, or if the encounter delays, it could be later on. So I think we're going to be looking at spring. However, I think we're all going to be very happy if it comes earlier. Hidar, thanks again for letting me know my mic wasn't working. Thank you so much. So, good morning, Cedric. How different is 2-year from a 3-year diploma for PR score calculation? Well, excellent question. And so Express Entry points comes from what's called the ministerial instructions. And you can Google this. Let's bring you to this page here. And then we're going to go take a look at the ministerial instructions. And we're going to scroll down. And these are the most recent ones, right, where they change from knock to tier. And let's go take a look here. So what you're asking is about your education. So we're going to go Control F, take a look at education here, and we're going to scroll down. So here we have the highest level of education, but we're looking for educational points. Let's take a look here. Education. They do list all the points here, and so it has to do. So here are the age points. So here we go. So here are the points. So if you're married, it's going to be different than if you're single. So here we're talking about points for the foreign national who's not accompanying spouse or common law partner. So here we take a look here at a 2-year post-secondary program credential gives you 98 points. But if we look at a 3-year, 3 years or more, it's going to give you 120 points. This is 22 points now here. Don't forget that the education is really important for another reason, and this is called transferability points. So we're going to go down here, and these are sometimes referred to additional points or bonus points. And what's so important is that you can get bonus points depending on your level of education and keen work experience. So 22 points, if you go from a 2 to a 3-year program, and then, right, if your program is 1 year or more, or postgraduate 1 year or more and 2 years of work experience, get 25 points. However, right, if the foreign national has 2 or more years of Canadian work experience and 2 or more post-secondary credentials, one of which is for 3 years or more, or university level credential at a master's level. So here we're talking about masters or 2 or more certificates with bonus points. Listen, I want to try to get through as many questions here, but take a look at this, because what I'm trying to tell you is that yes, you get 22 points from going from a 2 to a 3-year program, but you might also get additional points in terms of transferability points for your highest level of education, because they're going to give you points for the combination of education and Canadian work experience. There's also one, I think, for language and points for Canadian education. So 1 or 2 year degree, and after you do a 3-year degree, right? So here you can see you can get another 15 points. So take a look at this. There's also the CRS calculator. You can also fill it out and then give yourself, the 3-year as opposed to the 2, and it's going to take into consideration all your experience that you have. But it could be quite significant, right? We've seen here already how it could be, an extra 50 to 100 points depending on if you have keen work experience, your language scores, and whatnot. All right, Unique says, so happy about yesterday's surprise. Tears of joy, hope for those of us in the 480s. So, you know what? Congratulations to everyone who got an invitation to apply. And we can kind of look at, what's in the pool right now. I think that's going to be our best indication of, are we going to be looking at the 480s? So this was taken January 18th. This is before the draw, right? Before the draw on January 18th, right? Here are how many applicants had 500 or more, and here are how many applicants with 600 or more. So that's why we saw in the 490, because they took 5,500 individuals, right? So they took all these individuals here, up here at the top, and the 600. So we've essentially cleared the 490s. So now we're going to be looking at taking in the 480s, the 490 range. And I think it's very possible that the next draw could be around 485, 484. Now keep in mind that new profiles are being submitted, right? People are reaching out to us or submitting their own applications. And so there could be new people in the 500s, but I think you're very, very correct in saying that it could be in the 480s. Thanks so much, guys, for your help with the microphone earlier. I appreciate it. All right, Nick, let's get right to it. So this is, hi, Cedric, General Manager. My NOC is 620110, retail store supervisor, came as international student, now having 3-year post-graduation work permit, 7 months experience completed. Some websites say cook and retail supervisors not eligible for CEC. Oh, okay. Well, I would focus on what we know from IRCC and the tier levels, right? So we can just go over this quite briefly. So they might be talking about PNP programs. Keep in mind they might also be talking about federal skilled trades. They might be taught for cooks, right? They might also be talking about the old NOC programs that were there before, right? So let's go take a look here for eligibility. So here we're talking about the Canadian experience class, and then we take a look here at the the minimum work experience. So it has to be at a NOC or a tier 0, 1, 2, 3. We know this, and there's no jobs for express entry that are excluded. So some PNP programs have ineligible occupations. Those are PNP programs. This is not express entry. So express entry, we know it has to be tier 0, 1, 2, or 3. And right now, right on your NOC, I know it's a tier 2, right? Because that second number in the NOC code is the tier classification. So this is a tier 2, so it does qualify. We can actually take a look here at the tiers. It does qualify in terms of a tier 2 skilled position. So after 1 year of work experience, so 1,560 hours over 52 weeks, you will have qualifying work experience. Now, again, I don't know your whole situation. I'm not sure if you're looking at a PNP. I don't know if you're looking at another program in CEC, but what I can tell you just as general legal information, not advice, is that the retail supervisors is a tier 2. And as we just saw, eligibility for express entry, where was it? Eligibility for express entry is, sorry, I have way too many tabs open. Eligibility for express entry is tier 0, 1, 2, or 3. So again, I would just trust the information here on the IRCC webpage. Some websites may be outdated or talking about other PNP programs, not express entry. All right, Ada says, hi Cedric, is it possible for you not to get a CRS score when you apply for express entry? So yeah, so if your profile is deemed to be ineligible, right? So if you don't meet that eligibility criteria, it's gonna reject your profile as ineligible and you're not gonna get a CRS score, right? Because you have to be eligible to then apply for express entry. But typically when you create the profile and your profile is eligible, within 24 hours, sometimes within 10-20 minutes, you're going to see, it's going to tell you clearly, it's going to say, here's how many points you have and here's how we calculated your score. So it will tell you, you have to view the submitted application and you can find it there. All right, Monsoon Winter says, I'm a PR, have a sister that is deaf from birth. Is there any way she can come here to Canada? She is under 18, now staying with my parents. Thanks. So there's no, you might get so there's no there's no family sponsorship for siblings. You can't sponsor a sibling to come to Canada. In terms of her having, her being deaf to come to Canada, there is situations where they recognize dependent children over a certain age who continue to have physical or mental disabilities that may qualify as a dependent child over a certain age, but this is to do with the child-parent relationship, not necessarily with brother and sibling relationship. So kind of a tricky case, but generally speaking, there's no brother or sister sponsorship. Are your parents inside Canada? What's your parents' status? Those are probably what we're going to want to explore because there are child sponsorships, right? Sponsoring your children, just no sibling sponsorship. And there is, programs for orphans and whatnot, but unfortunately, the fact that your parents are there is that also, like, it's very rare that you're going to be able to sponsor a brother or sister. They have to immigrate on their own merit or immigrate as a child, as a dependent. So it gets a little bit tricky, but do reach out, do book a consult if you want to talk more about your family situation and exploring options for that. But generally speaking, right, there's no brother or sister sponsorship here in Canada. Even for parents, it's quite difficult. All right. Ida says, well, TR to PR is something we are going to see. So I know this is a question that constantly comes up. The TR to PR that we saw was during, in 2021 was exceptional in terms of anyone being in Canada with TR. Pretty much, there was certain classes and whatnot, but it was very generous. They could apply for permanent residency. I think we're not going to see this big program where the first 10,000 people apply get PR. What we do know is that they're going to be changing Express Entry and exploring ways for international students to have permanent residence. And they're going to be exploring various programs that's going to lead to PR. So how can they transition people quicker from TR to PR? That we're expecting. It was announced, I think about a few months now, it was announced that they're doing studies, and we're getting closer and closer to when the actual details are going to be announced. But I don't think we're going to see, like in 2021, this huge TR to PR that was implemented during COVID. I think what we're going to see is a lot of small changes that make it really beneficial for people to get permanent residency inside Canada. So really, really exciting times to immigrate to Canada. If you're already in Canada, if you're a student, or if you're interested, do reach out. As I was saying earlier, we're Whole Foods Immigration Law. Take a look at our website, tons of new blogs about misrepresentations, whole bunch of information about how to immigrate, how to study, how to work. And if you do want to speak with a lawyer, if you want us to do the application with you and help you, more than happy to do that for you. All right, Unique says, my convocation ceremony is happening next month, which means the date on the certificate will be February, but I've added the qualification to my Express Entry profile as awarded based on completion letter. All right, so this is tricky, Unique. This is tricky. So the program completion letter is used for the post-graduation work permit, but in Express Entry, when you're filling out your actual information, they ask you if the degree has been awarded, and that's different from completing the program, right? So I would be very cautious against claiming that you have a degree, that you've been awarded the degree in your Express Entry profile if you've completed your program and you don't yet have your degree. Now, you might be able to issue it earlier. Universities know about this, and colleges, they know about it, and they know that some people really need their degree earlier, and it's possible that they can issue it sometimes before the actual convocation for immigration. But you have to be awarded the degree to claim the points for Express Entry, not just the program completion. And this is confirmed in the ministerial instructions and also the completeness check. You have to provide your degree. You have to also provide your actual transcripts that shows that you've been awarded the degree, right? So tricky situation, and as I mentioned, you need to have the degree awarded. Now, it's just general information, and I don't know about the specifics of your case, but please book a consult so we can actually talk about in detail about how to claim these points. And to be honest, it's most likely going to involve waiting until you actually have your degree awarded, because there is a difference between the degree being awarded and you actually claiming points for just a program that's being completed, right? And look, we can take a look at this on the completeness check. So this is the completeness check. This is what you can Google to find more details about. And let's go down here to education, and right, you need proof of having completed the post-secondary program. And here's proof of completed Canadian or foreign credentials. Include copies of your educational document, certificate, degree, or diploma, right? And the transcripts have successfully completed the post-graduation program, right? So I'm not sure how you're going to provide a degree or diploma if, right, you don't have this. So there's more requirements as well, but in your Express Entry profile, I fill out Express Entry profiles. It's either it's going to say completed but not awarded, or awarded. So make sure you answer that question very carefully, or to be honest, it could be a misrepresentation, right? All right, and it says, saw there was an update in my profile yesterday. Background status changed to we are processing. Application is in progress. Does this mean anything? Continued. My eligibility is passed. Info sharing is in progress. Criminality security not started. This information is given to me when I called IRCC a month ago. Yeah, so it does you'll see the updates. You'll see a change. Criminality security usually takes a few weeks, obviously depending on your situation. But yeah, it's generally a good sign that your application is processing. Lima, nice to see you again. Lima says, good morning, Cedric. Good morning, Lima. What is the processing time for CC application these days? Excellent question. So it's probably around 4 to 6 to 8 months. So if you take a look here on the website, go check processing times, and we're going to do, right, we're going to fill this out, Canadian Experience class, and it's going to tell us 20 months and via Express Entry. And now 20 months, but I just told you 4, 6, or 8 months. What essentially happened is that, IRCC has a big pool of COVID-related Express Entry applications that they're going through. Some applications, yes, are taking this long, about 20 months, but through our experience in the last 6 months or so, we're seeing a lot of CC applicants getting their Express Entry within 3 to 6 months. So this is based on experience. When you have a properly completed application, all the documents, the profile filled out, letters of explanation to help visa officer navigate any uncertainty inside your profile, it makes it you don't get additional document requests, no procedural fairness letters. It does speed up the processing of the application. But yeah, we're seeing about 4 to 6 months. I submitted an application. I'd have to check exactly when, but I think it was October, maybe September. And right, these individuals already have their Portal 2 email, and they're in queue for their in Canada landing, right? So to get the confirmation of permanent residence. So not even 4 months in this case. So yeah, we're seeing about 3 to 6 months, I think is reasonable to expect. But keep in mind that this is based on our experience, and the posted time online is still 20 months, just to manage your expectations a little bit. All right, next question. Ria says, hello, Cedric. It's an excellent question. TRV for spouses is something that's always very difficult, right? You have a spouse in Canada, and you might have been married before or after, and you want someone to come visit you. And a TRV is a temporary status, and immigration officers, when they see that you're coming to Canada to be with a spouse, sometimes they think you're never going to go back to your country, right? You're going to stay for Canada forever, and they really want you to prove that you're gonna come to Canada and leave at the end of your stay, right? So if you have a US visa or a European visa, or even if you have a European passport, right, and how many times you've been in Canada, all these things can impact your chance of success for a TRV spousal, right? It can be quite difficult in some cases to prove, but we know that there is the work permits, right? There's a temporary public policy that was announced taking impact in January regarding work permits, spousal open work permits. So that's great, but nothing that I know of right now regarding TRV for spouses to really allow them to come to Canada and to enter Canada, right? Work permit is different from the actual visa. But listen, Ria, excellent question. I do have a few clients with spousal and work permits in similar situations. So I do plan to look at it in more detail and see, really what's going on with the TRV for spousals, but not much that I'm aware right now. Sunshine says, hi, Cedric. I will apply for a study in Canada soon, and my 2-year program is a hybrid, online and offline. If I did half of it home and the rest in Canada, would I still be eligible for apply for PR? And the rest, so I assume by home you mean outside Canada, and I will apply to study in Canada soon, and my 2-year program is hybrid, online and offline. If I did half of it home and the rest in Canada, would I be eligible to apply for PR? So various PR programs, right? So let's just focus on Express Entry. And the answer to your question is that, well, more than 50, there's some specific rules that applied during COVID that allowed people, right, who did distance learning. Oops, I'm not sure why. Gotta fix that. There we go. I just want to, Control F here and go 50%. What do they use? Do they use 50%? No, they must use half. So there's specific rules that applied. Try to find it here again. I just try to really find the rules here. So for education, so for Canadian education, right, there's a few limitations. So eligible credentials, have a degree from a post-secondary education, exceptions. So if your study program is French or English as a second language, so if you're studying English or French as a second language, it's not going to be eligible for the credentials. The credentials obtained in a study training program in which distant learning amounted to more than half of the program, right? So my question for you, Sunshine, is more than half the program distance learning? because the ministerial instructions for Express Entry explicitly say that this type of education is not allowed. Credentials obtained while receiving a scholarship. So this doesn't apply to you, but this is for some specific scholarship. So more than half of the program needs to be in person, right? So super important for Express Entry. Again, there's different PR programs. This is the most popular one, Express Entry. If you talk about PNPs, right? So provincial nominee programs, those are administered by the province. They might have their own requirements saying, no, you need to do your whole study program in person, or they might not, right? So it really depends on your program. Hadar says, thanks, Cedric. One more question. Any new ministerial updates regarding considering work experiences of international students later for PR purposes? Right, so the Canadian experience class, right? We know that Canadian work experience, that it was obtained during as a full-time student in Canada, does not count towards Canadian experience class. And we can find that here. Where is it? We can definitely find it. So this is the combination of Canadian work. Oops, my goodness. Technical issues, playing with the format. Where is it? Canadian work experience. Oh, sorry, I'm not even sharing. Might as well share the screen here. All right, so here we go. So Canadian work experience, and then we're going to take a look down here and the requirements. Where is it? So there we go. So period of employment during which the foreign national student was engaged in full-time study is not to be included in calculating a period of work experience. So in Hadar, you probably already knew this, but I'm just trying to help as many people and show them, right? People might not know this, right? But so right now there's no new news on your work experience being eligible for CEC, but we do know that they are seriously considering transitioning international students straight to PR. So maybe something could come up, but as of right now, that work experience as a full-time student is still ineligible for Canadian experience class. All right, Anita says, we got pre-arrival September 28, 2022, waiting for passport request mail. How long does it take? Yeah, so this is getting a little bit long. I think typically it's 60 to 30 days that you get between, the final email ready for visa, update your passport, give us more information, and actually getting your passport request, right? So usually about 30 to 60 days. So it's getting a little bit long, but again, it really depends on the visa office you're dealing with. Some visa offices are super busy, some are less busy. Some might have staffing issues, some might have been closed during COVID. Who knows, right? But I mean, it's still within processing. You can make a web form, but it's getting a little bit long, but I won't think it's anything to be super worried about. But, if you're worried, you can definitely make a web form to try to contact the visa office. And I just want to take a moment. I have a video about how to make a web form, and it's important because there's inside Canada and then you have outside Canada web forms. So go to this page. There's other pages for web forms, but this is the one that I use, and this is the one to contact the visa office directly. So this is the page you're looking for. Now, at first you might be like, what? What is this? But here it is. What do you want to do? I want to ask a question about my application, give you information, tell us more. And then, this menu here at the bottom opens up. And here we're going to say, yes, you're right, you apply for permanent residence. And then here we're going to say, yes, my application is being processed outside of Canada. And then here you're going to go, well, if this is the case, right, check your acknowledgement of receipt, check your documents. Most likely it's being processed outside of Canada. It could also be processed inside Canada, depending on your type of PR application. And then here, right, so if you want to contact Mexico City, right, in this case, just picking a random city in here, the case-specific inquiry is going to be sent directly to the Mexico City embassy, right? So Mexico City office for IRCC. So straight to the visa office. And I have to say the web forms are being answered more quickly these days, still about a few weeks, but quicker than what we've other times during COVID. All right, Nick, next question. In order to get 50 points for the LMIA, are there any specific requirements for the employer in terms of revenue or employment of 5 or 3 citizens /PR? So this is a really loaded question, Nick. The reason why is because there's a lot of requirements for LMIAs, right? High wage, low wage, named LMIAs, open LMIAs. So all these requirements to do with LMIAs themselves. And there is, if you're doing a low wage LMIA, there's conditions on how many temporary residents or foreign temporary workers you can hire, depending on how many Canadians and PR you have. So it depends, high wage, low wage. That's for the LMIA itself. We're not talking about the 50 points for Express Entry. It's just for the LMIA. So without more information, a little bit hard to get more into details, but there could be specific requirements for the employer for the LMIA. Now, my colleague Alicia wrote this really great blog, and we're gonna continue scrolling down here. Where is it? It's super helpful because this question comes up, I think, almost every live Q&A, and the answer is quite technical. So here we go. Can I claim points for a job offer in my Express Entry application? And the reason I'm pointing this out is because you need the LMIA, but you need more than the LMIA, right? Like, you're getting a job for qualifying offer of arranged employment. You need, obviously to have continuous, full-time, non-seasonal work in a high-skilled knock. And it also need to have a new job offer where they specify they're going to continue hiring you for 1 year. And then we have 3 different scenarios, right? So you have a valid new positive LMIA that you're going to submit. You're already working in Canada with an LMIA, or you're working in Canada on an exempt, LMIA exempt. So it can get really complicated really fast to claim those extra points when we talk about what documents you actually need to have. And it gets really complicated. Well, not complicated, but there's a lot of details when we talk about what are the specific requirements for employers, because is it high wage or low wage LMIA? And yeah, it can get kind of tricky sometimes. So a little bit of a loaded question, but I hope this helps to put you on the right track. Look up high wage LMIAs if that applies to you, and look up at the employer requirements, and look up to see what your employer needs to prove in terms of to get the LMIA. I just want to add here, obviously it has to be like a legitimate business. Obviously they need to show that they can pay for you, right? Obviously they need to show that they can't hire Canadian citizen or PR. So that there's like all these requirements. But Nick, listen, reach out and consult. We could work with your employer, but this is really the employer does the LMIA. You don't do the LMIA, and then we could work with you to do to claim the 50 points, make sure you have the job offer, and so on. All right, Leb says in many countries, PhD is legally full-time job, research scholar, being an employee of the university, not student. Can the PhD tenure therefore be claimed for work experience for Express Entry? So excellent question. So one of the main differences between Canadian Experience class and Federal Skilled Worker Program is for the Federal Skilled Worker Program, so we're talking about work experience outside Canada, it actually counts experience when you're a full-time student. So it's going to say it right here, part-time work experience, student work experience, gained while studying may count towards your minimum requirements if, and here's the catch, wages was paid by wages or commission, was continuous, and meets all the other requirements of the program. So continuous, it can't be like December 15th to January 30th, like have a break in time. It really has to be continuous. So I think people who do PhDs face this issue of not having the continuous work experience. It has to be continuous for federal skilled worker. And it also has to be wages or commission. And can I pull it up? I don't know if I can find it in 30 seconds, but I was reading a case about students and who are PhDs and teachers and whatnot who get stipends, research stipends or research grants, right, that they get to keep. And it's like getting paid, but it's not wages or commission. And this is something that I've been working on. Oh, I might be able to find it. Let's find it here. Aha. All right, so it's a federal court case. It's going to be paragraph 29. Let's just go ahead and pull it up. And this stuff really, I focus on rejected applications. I focus on federal court jurisprudence, arguing cases and in court when there's rejected applications. What is going on here? So this is really interesting stuff. So look, it's going to look like a lot of this website called Canly, and you can see here's the case that I'm talking about. So do take a look. Here's the citation for the case. So go to Canly, type this in, federal court decision called Boang and the Minister of Citizenship and Immigration, and we're going to get right up in some juicy details here. So definition of work, but here we go. So paragraph 29. So in this case, you can read about it more in detail, but we're talking about what is work, and specifically wages are paid or commission is earned, right? So here we're talking about the ministerial instructions, what are wages, and in this case, so it's to do with the University of British Columbia, to do with wages and stipends and research stipends. It's going to take a little bit of time to get into it, but I'm just going to leave you with this case. But it does specifically talk about whether or not stipends or research and whatnot is how it's paid, but whether or not it's going to count as wages paid. But so it's definitely something you want to be aware of when you prepare your Express Entry application. And let's talk to you about more in detail. But if you're not getting wages paid, right, like you're not getting an actual salary or commission, it could be problematic to actually claim that work experience as Canadian work experience, as a federal skilled worker experience. All right. Okay. So this case, the person got scholarships, and they were also doing work, but was the scholarships considered wages? Anyways, take a look at it. Super interesting. I do want to move on. We could maybe spend half an hour just talking about this court case, but tons of questions here. So let's move on. Got pre-arrival. We've already talked about this. Nick says, "Yeah, I'm sorry, Nick. I know that I wasn't really. It's hard to answer your question, but yes, there's most likely employer requirements." Hardy says, "Cedric, for the 3 to 5 year experience points, are those given by working in the same NOC or for that time, or just having work experience in general?" So foreign work experience caps at 3 years. So I presume you're asking about Canadian work experience that caps at 5 years, right? So we have eligibility. So eligibility, you have to meet the eligibility. So federal skilled worker, 1 year continuous full-time. You have to meet it, right? You could have the equivalent of part-time. So 2 years part-time continuous, right? That would count. In your case, you're asking about the same NOC. So yes, for federal skilled worker, it has to be in the same NOC. For Canadian experience class, it does not need to be on the same NOC. So Canadian experience class, there's no requirement of having continuous work experience. There's no requirement that you have, that it be in the same NOC. We can take a look at that very quickly. I think it actually says it. I don't know, does it say it on the website here? Working in Canada, right? You obviously need a status. That has to be Canadian work experience in Canada. Does it say you must perform the duties, lead statement, right? So we've already talked about student work experience. So it doesn't say it, but no, you can have, there's no requirement of it can be continuous. So you can definitely stack up 2 6-month jobs, different NOCs, as long as it's skilled, right? Tier 1, 0, 1, 2, or 3. Yeah, no problem with that. But for federal skilled worker, we saw it's different. Does immigration plan PNP numbers indicate that all Express Entry related PNPs? If not, what's the percentage that's associated with Express Entry? Good question amongst us. I don't think I know the answer to that question. We could go look at the immigration levels planned, but I'm not sure if it's actually divided as well as Express Entry based PNPs or non-Express Entry based PNPs. I don't think it is, and I think that's why you're asking this question. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to your question, but I know that PNPs are very popular, and a lot of people do immigrate to Canada with PNPs, right? So once you're in Canada and have some work experience, or in some provinces, some sort of connection to a province, you might be able to apply through a PNP. What's the percentage approval for TRV visa if my spouse is already put in a sponsorship visa? So Antoinette, it really depends. It really, really depends. It's really going to depend on their travel experience, right? If they've already come to Canada, other visas, it's going to depend on their ties in their country, right? Do they have property, business owners, strong ties to the country, or are they, for example, a little bit younger, never traveled, not a lot of savings, little ties to the country? So these are all factors that visa officers are going to consider. And our role as immigration lawyers is really to help you craft these letters of explanation to really help you explain your situation and make sure that you really put your best foot forward to immigration authorities. So if you're just joining us, head on over to our website, Holth Immigration Law, HOLTH. Go ahead here and speak with a lawyer, book an immigration consultation. And in this consult, we talk about, how to go over, how to go over Express Entry, your TRV, and then we can talk about how we can help you, right? Representing you at IRCC, submitting an R account and your account, really helping you out. So yeah, it's really, really hard to answer this question without really talking about specifics about, what's going on with the situation, right? Sahil, nice to hear from you, Sahil. And yeah, absolutely, there's hope. I think 475, maybe within 3 months, maybe sooner. There's absolutely hope. It's a pretty good score, right? Last one was 490. Next one's gonna be about 485, and it's only gonna go downhill from there, right? So there's about 10, I think we saw about 10 to 15,000 people ahead of you. To take 5,500 every 2 weeks, probably looking at 6 weeks, right? But this is just to get the invitation to apply. And keep in mind, talk a lot about it on this YouTube channel called the Completeness Check. The Completeness Check. All these documents. So read this. If you're applying to Express Entry, I cannot stress this enough. This is the document that you want to read A to Z, Z to A, and read it 3 times. Because look, guys, so specific. Translation of documents. The translation package should include, right, the translation of all documents, right? Have a source document. Translation must be stamped by the translator or refer to affidavit. Scan the original, scan the certified copy, right? Mandatory documents. What do they mean by medical examination confirmation? What do they mean by police certificates? Well, they mean that, right? It has to be color, right? It has to be color. It can't be certified true copies. They want these up front. It is mandatory, right? Anywhere you've lived the last 10 years for 6 months in a row. What do they mean by, right? What do they mean by these requirements? So it's super, super specific. You're not going to find this in your Express Entry profile. And this is really what we focus on as immigration lawyers, making sure that you have all the proper stuff. But listen, take a look at the completeness check, Sahil. So it is super, super, super important, right? Reference letter. So I deal with a lot of rejected applications. People who did their own applications, it gets rejected. Why? Well, the reference letter didn't have the job title. It might have said they were a great employee, super kind, great worker, hard worker, but it never listed specifically their duties, what they were doing, how they were doing it. Super important. Annual salary plus benefits, right? It has to be there. We just spoke about wages and commission. Super, super, super important. Don't just accept, the half paragraph, the 3-line reference letter that you get. Don't just accept saying, oh no, your job offer that you got is going to be fine. This has to be a reference or experience letter from your employer. So take a look at this. Super, super important. What mandatory documents apply to you? What if you're common law? What if you're divorced? Take a look at this. Super, super, super important. And we do quite a bit of Express Entry, so please do reach out if you want us to help you prepare the application. Lima, good question. They are slow, but I guarantee you they are processing them because we've had a few rejections rolled in for cases that are not the applicant's fault. Like there's a rejection. It was like, you need an LMIA, and we're like, what? What is going on? We had a rejection as well saying that the person applied after the 90 days. But we all know that the temporary public policy allowed this to apply after the 90-day restoration, right? So we are seeing rejections rolling in, errors that IRCC is making, and we are successful. I've had just yesterday, or was it today? Yesterday or today? No, it was yesterday. Someone wrote to me, and I did a reconsideration for post-graduation extension, and we were able to get them back into processing, and they were approved within about a week. So if you have a post-graduation work permit rejection, please reach out. And that says, hi, is it possible that eligibility passed first and then info share and criminality? Or is there any sequence to pass stages one by one? I hope I can explain my question properly. And that it's, I really think that they take your application, they go through the completeness check. We know that 100%. If you don't have your police certificate is black and white, your ECA is expired, your language results, right, doesn't match up with what you put in the system, returned as incomplete. All right, next step, they're most likely going to look at the medicals. Are your medicals still valid? Do you have to redo the medicals? Great. Medicals might pass or not. They passed the medicals. Next step after that, they're going to look at info sharing, criminality. That's what they're going to do. It's called the background check. That's what they're going to look at. It can take 2 weeks. It can take 6 months. It can take 2 years. It really depends on your case. A high number of them are being processed about 2 to 4 weeks for normal cases, right? But 2 to 4 weeks. And then we're actually, the visa officer needs to look at everything. They're going to look at the eligibility. They're going to look at your medicals. They're going to look at everything. And they're then going to make the decision as to whether or not they're going to issue you a confirmation of permanent residence. They're at this stage is when they're going to diligently review everything, right? The reference letter, does it actually match the knock that's claimed, right? In the eligibility stage, they're just looking, is there a reference letter, right? That's what they're looking at. But at a later stage, before they give you the confirmation of permanent residence, they are going to go through the whole application. And we see it when we have ATIPs, we see this usual format in terms of how applications are being processed. And we know that at the last stage, it could be rejected. They could look again, and there could be a problem with the police certificate. There could be an issue with the reference letters, information. The visa officer could think that you don't have the work experience for the knock that you claimed, right? So they could give you a procedural fairness letter. So right? So this is the typical process that it works. And then you get your confirmation of permanent residence if you're in Canada or abroad, if you need a visa, if you don't need a visa, depending on your situation. So that's just a very general overview. But, there's no law that says they have to do security before they do eligibility, right? They can do whatever they want, really, when it comes to processing the application, as long as it's fair and reasonable, right? And they respect the law and regulations. But if they do background check before eligibility, or if they do medicals before this, they're allowed to do it. So this answers your question. I just went over the overall way that most applications are processed. Your application could be different. They could be processing it differently, right? As I mentioned, no rules as to step A, B, C that they have to follow when they make the decision. So it could be a little bit different in your case, right? Depending on your scenario. So I hope this answers the question. We talked about this already. And yeah, employees of the university, right? So my question for you, Leb, is going to be, are you paid wages or commission? If you're paid a research stipend, if you have scholarships for this, or you could be an employee, but if it's not paid through wages or commission, it's not going to meet the ministerial instructions for Express Entry, right? So very, very important. And again, this is going to be abroad. So and I know PhD students can go through semesters, and between semesters, it could be a gap of employment. If it's not continuous, it doesn't count for federal skilled workers, right? So super, super important to make sure that you have the proper supporting documents, and you might not qualify, right? You might have breaks in time and whatnot, and unfortunately, you might not qualify, right? You can't change the past, but you can definitely look at getting another job and later reapplying for Express Entry. And then once you have the 1 year continuous, then you can claim the other work experience, because just that 1 year for eligibility needs to be continuous. The rest can be, broken up in different chunks. What do you think the next CRS job will be? I'm going to say 485, but I'm just taking a wild guess. And we did this earlier in the live Q&A, just super briefly, right? You can actually see here in the rounds of invitation, you can see the pool. So we know they're taking 5,500 individuals every 2 weeks. So we can calculate it's okay. This was 5,500 individuals. Now we're going to look at the 480s, right? So imagine they take half of the 480s, so 45. But keep in mind that there could be new PNPs. There could be new people entering the pool of good profiles, right? So I think next draw is going to be 485. All right, next question. Now we are wrapping up, guys. We have another 10 minutes here. We are wrapping up. Let's just take a look here at this next question. Kirat says, spousal open work permit refused twice now. I got ITA. Should I submit my only marriage certificate? Other proof along with the marriage certificate in Express Entry application. So let's go to the completeness check, guys. Like, I can't stress this enough. Like, if I was doing my own immigration application and super serious about it, I would read this document like extensively. And keep in mind, this is just the minimum documents. We can definitely provide more. So let's go take a look here. Proof of funds, letters of employer. We will have a part here that's going to talk about so you're not common law, you're actually married. So, marriage certificate. So it must be valid under the law of the country where it took place and under Canadian law, right? So if you're previously married and you married again, right, it's not going to be valid under Canadian law. You have to be married, divorced, married. There's also some countries have specific laws regarding religions marrying or specific laws to do regarding marriages. It has to be valid in Canada and in your country where you're getting married. And then keep in mind, I see some refusals for marriage certificates where people provide registration copies. They provide attestation of marriage by the city clerk. They provide, the marriage registration form that's signed and stamped. They want the marriage certificate. The marriage certificate. They don't want anything else. You can provide more documents if you want, right? This is just the minimums. You could give the marriage certificate and you could give photos if you want and letters of explanation and letters of support. But really, if you don't have this marriage certificate, and again, specific countries have specific marriage certificates, it could be rejected. So have 100% provide marriage certificate in the proper format. And we talked about this earlier, like just moments ago, but make sure it's translated, like stamped, right? Both the source document and translation are stamped or referred into an affidavit. And sorry, I'm blocking it here, but here we have it. So definitely do that. Now, other relationship proof, you can if you want, but from my understanding, your husband or wife is already inside Canada, and right? So they're already inside Canada. You can definitely supplement it, but the very minimum, 100% marriage certificate. Express Entry is an economic type of application, so they're really focused on your economics, right? Your education, your work experience, your language, and how you're going to come to Canada and contribute to Canadian society. This doesn't mean that you can just skip the marriage certificate, but yeah, you could definitely provide more of the marriage certificate, but I would definitely provide the marriage certificate and get it translated. All right. Unique says, does work experience gained as a student count for FSW? 100% it does. I worked still full-time with my school on a skilled job. 100% it does. Federal skilled worker does count for full-time work experience, but we just went over working at a school. Sometimes it's not actual wages. Sometimes it's not continuous. So make sure that you take a look at that. All right. Astroprofil Vam says, I'm at 481 in CC. Postgraduate expires in April. Can I apply for extensions? Chances of approval. Thank you. Kind of a race against the clock. 481. So you can't right now apply for an extension, right? So you can't just apply for an open work permit or LMIA, right? But what you can do is apply. Once you apply for Express Entry, you would be able to apply for what's called a bridging open work permit. So this is, we're not talking about the profile. We're talking about you have a profile, get your invitation to apply, you submit your application, you pay the fees, it's submitted to IRCC. Within about 24 hours, you're going to get an acknowledgement of receipt, and it should send the acknowledgement of receipt says you can apply for bridging open work permit, right? So take a look here, and take a look here. So if you applied for Express Entry, so not a profile, you've actually applied to Express Entry. So you live inside Canada, you either have a valid work permit, expired work permit, but under the 90 days to restore, or you're eligible or maintain status, or you're going to be under 90 days to restore. So what you want is really to apply, I'm going to move this down here. What you really want is to apply when you have a valid work permit to continue having your maintained status. So 481, let's say you get an ITA March 1st, right? You would want to, like right now, you want to start working on your supporting documents, right? Make sure you have your police certificates ready, right? Make sure that you have your reference letters. You don't want to be chasing employers for these letters. Make sure that everything is complete, right? You might even provide more documents, tax documents, pay stubs for the job. You might want to provide marriage certificate. We just talked about it. Get your documents translated so you're not running around with an interpreter to get things translated. And then you're going to get your ITA and you're going to apply within like a week. You're going to, all the documents are going to be ready. You're going to submit the documents. You're going to apply. You get the letter. You're going to submit your work permit extension. Once you have your acknowledgement of receipt, it says here you need your acknowledgement of receipt, right? Once you have your acknowledgement of receipt, then you're going to submit your application. And then you're going to be under maintained status. If you apply before work permit expires, you apply for a work permit, and it's a legit application. You're not just applying to some random thing, but it's a legit application. You're going to be under maintained status, and you're going to be allowed to continue working until this decision is made on your application. So it's called implied status. It used to be called implied status, now maintained status. So please take a look at that. And this is something that we do help our Express Entry clients with, is really making sure that everything is properly completed, ready to go, right? Everything's properly entered in the profile. So when you get the ITA, it's a breeze to just submit the profile. So it's a lot of work up front to make sure that everything else is properly prepared. So do reach out, go on our website, book a consult. I'd love to speak with you about making sure all your documents are ready, making sure everything's ready to go, and then we can even help you apply for the Bridging Open Work Permit to make sure that you can continue working the whole summer, right? Because we know right now that the delay for work permits inside Canada is 168 days now, 167 days, 169 days. So you definitely don't want to find yourself in a scenario where you have to reject an ITA because you're missing some supporting documents, and then you're waiting for another ITA, and then you're going to submit it late after your work permit expires, and then you're not going to work for the next 169 days because you submitted after your work permit expires, right? So super important to make sure that application is going to be properly prepared. Rashida too. So I spoke about earlier about a blog by my colleague Alicia. It's an excellent blog. I could not recommend it enough. This talks about your specific question. This is a very common mistake that I see with Express Entry applications. People, in a consult are like, oh, the application's ready to go. Everything's fine. We're good to go. But in reality, right, when we take a look at the profile, we realize that someone's claimed points for something they shouldn't have. And you cannot get the ITA because you don't have the specific points. So no, you cannot apply. You cannot get the points. If you don't have an LMIA, you can't claim points for a qualifying offer of employment. It's only in specific scenarios, right? Either you have a new LMIA, you currently have an LMIA-based work permit, or you have an LMIA exempt but employer-specific work permit. So an post-graduation work permit is a open work permit. It is not LMIA-based and it's not employer-specific, so you're not able to claim points for the job offer. It's like, read this blog, a lot of legalese, but it really answers your question. Again, briefly, you need an LMIA, a valid LMIA. You need to have an LMIA-based work permit or employer-specific, right? The post-graduation work permit is open, which means that it does not qualify for this. All right. 419, Saskatchewan Immigration Program, 65 points for the PNP. Will there be any chances? Only for 1 year. 80 points in PEI. I mean, I hope so. FX. I mean, something that a lot of people underestimate is language scores. Language scores give you bonus points or transferability points for Express Entry, right? Saskatchewan Immigration Nominee Program, right? You get more points as well if you're higher language scores. So look at whether or not you can just improve one of your language scores to have 9s everywhere, 7s everywhere, right? You might have 9,996, 9,997. You're not getting the 9 everywhere points for CRS points. So, I mean, I wish you good luck. I mean, hopefully the score comes down. 419 was not a good score before COVID, right? 419 was before COVID. It was not a good score. During COVID, it's 490, it's 485. It's really high right now. So, you can explore one of the PNPs if you want, but, you might have to do more education, improve your language scores to really get that bump in points, because immigrating to Canada, to be honest, is really competitive immigrating to Canada. All right, Donna says, hi, good morning. Supervisor in a restaurant. Do I need to finish 1 year work experience? And what application fit for me to get my PR application? Thank you so much. So yeah, so supervisor in a restaurant is going to be under the NOC tier points. It's going to be a tier, like it's going to be a skilled work experience. And so you don't need to wait 1 year before applying for Express Entry. So if you have federal skilled worker experience, so foreign work experience, you might already qualify for the minimum eligibility, right? So based on other work experiences, if you want to qualify for the Canadian experience class, yes, you have to get 1 year of Canadian work experience, right? So you need to finish 1 year work experience. You might have to, depending on your situation, previous work experience and whatnot. Keep in mind that there is some PNP programs for your positions. Some of them are in demand. We know that Express Entry targeted draws might be restaurant supervisors because there's a really lack of restaurant supervisors. But like it's hard to answer your question without knowing your province, not knowing more about your other work experiences. But yeah, it's possible that you might have to wait 1 year to have that 1 year Canadian work experience. How does processing time work outside Canada? Jamal, I'm sorry, I don't know your question. Like, I don't know what program you're applying for, but take a look here, right? Take a look here. There's a delays calculator, specifically talks about processing times for various, economic immigration, right? Federal skilled workers, it's going to say, like 30 months, but really this is like pre-COVID, post-COVID. I think most Express Entry applications are taking about 6 months right now, which is great. Obviously, your mileage may vary. And if you look at work permits, right? So if you're looking for a work permit from outside Canada or visitor visa from outside Canada, depending, if you're applying from Austria, 148 days. Or if you're applying, for example, from Indonesia, it might be closer to 14 days. So it really depends on the visa office. Take a look at this. And again, I think Express Entry is around 6 months. I think the other times are actually quite accurate based on my experience. Zika says, hey Cedric, Sierra score 369 with bachelor degree outside Canada, less than 1 year experience. Do you have any thoughts? Well, I don't think you're eligible for Express Entry, right? Right. We've talked about in detail how eligibility is minimum 1 year continuous skilled experience. So I don't think you're eligible for Express Entry right now, but again, I've mentioned this earlier, but a lot of people underestimate language. You get transferability points, right? Combination of work experience plus language, you can get additional bonus points. So take a look at that. But yeah, your 1 year work experience is going to make a difference. You might be looking at getting a master's degree to give you more points, improving your English, getting that 1 year experience. And if you speak French, right, you get 50 bonus points if you speak French. So at a certain level, and obviously there's more to it. You have to do a French test, but that could also be available as well. All right, guys, we're going to take our very last questions. It's been a really great Q&A. Thank you so much for joining me. Just really want to thank you all. I know a lot of immigration consultants do live Q&As, but we're immigration lawyers, went to school for 8 years, practicing for 5, worked at the federal court, Immigration Refugee Board, the United Nations as well. All to say is that we do take time to help people to talk about Express Entry, and we do appreciate so many questions, so much great participation, guys. I really do appreciate it. Oh, and Lima, thank you so much. Thank you, Cedric. Well, I do appreciate it. I do appreciate you guys as well. All right, guys, we're gonna be winding down our 1 hour live Q&A. I do them usually on Thursdays, sometimes Tuesdays as well. And I find it hard to talk for a whole hour, so I do need to drink water. All right. Hi, I've completed only 10 months, permanent full-time work, already received IT under CC with increased score. I'm concerned if I should accept the invitation or not. Yeah, so there are some glitches that took place in December regarding ITAs for CEC. If you know that you don't have 1 year of work experience, again, CEC does not have to be full-time. It does not have to be continuous. Sorry, it does have to be full-time. It does not have to be continuous. So maybe you have 10 months here, 3 months there. But if you really don't have any Canadian work experience, and it's just going to get rejected, I would not submit the profile. Right? It could be a misrepresentation if you're trying to claim 1 year work experience when you don't. It could also just lead to your application being rejected and losing out on fees. I would really recommend to have a nicely completed application with all the relevant documents, especially in your case if it just means waiting another 2 months till you have that 1 year Canadian work experience, right? So sometimes the system doesn't ask for specific days. So you might have started working, let's say like on February 28th, and now on a whole year on January 1st you get an ITA. So the computer programs thinks it's February to January. Well, in reality you're missing like 7 weeks, right? You can't. Don't submit your profile. You don't have 52 weeks. You don't have 1,560 hours, right, of work experience. So I would reject it, and it's tough. You've been probably working really hard for years for this ITA, but I would reject it. Just wait. Properly submit your application. Wait till you know that you actually have evidence to show you meet the eligibility, because IRCC will not hesitate to reject your application, right? Why would they process a whole application and spend hours on it when they can reject it because you do not provide reference letter with 12 months of work experience, they will reject it. I've seen it many times. All right, we're winding down here, guys. We have a last question from Ashkov. Says, when exactly can I claim sibling points for CRS score in Canada after confirmation of permanent residence? So it's an interesting question because the ministerial instructions talk about PR citizen. You can get additional points, but when you take a look at the completeness check, they actually expect you to provide the PR card, right? It specifically says like PR card. So this question comes up once in a while, and it's I always recommend to follow the IRCC instructions to the letter, right? And we can take a look here about points for siblings. So here we go. So proof of relationship, so on. So keep in mind, like, you should have your birth certificate and their birth certificate, and it should show the same parent's name. You can even have, a family booklet. Some countries have family booklets. They have all the family members and brothers and sisters. It'd be very helpful, right? But the required document is, if the required document, so copy both sides of the citizenship document, birth certificate, and or permanent resident card must be provided. So it's interesting, right? Because the ministerial instructions don't say this. The ministerial instructions say if you have a PR or sibling. So Ashkov, as I mentioned, IRCC is not going to hesitate to reject your PR application if you're missing some important documents, right? So I would wait until the PR card until you get it. And this may be something that IRCC could improve, right? Is change this and say, like, if they've just arrived to Canada and they have a confirmation of permanent residence, right? But I think what they're doing with this is that you really need to show they're also living in Canada, right? So lease, mortgage, and whatnot. They can't just be a PR, not living in Canada. Then we talked about the proof of relationship, right? So really showing that you guys are related. Birth certificates, if they have both parents' names, are really good. All right, guys. Can I apply on study visa? Raj here. Let's look at your question, Raj. Can I apply study visa, my wife and spouse visa at the same time? Will they be a risk because it's just been a month since we married? Yeah, this is really case specific, right? So it depends on your travel history, depends on your strength of your marriage, depends on your ties, right? Sometimes IRCC is gonna issue just a study permit for the wife or husband, and not the open spousal work permit, because they think that the person is not going to return to their country, right? So if the spouse stays in the country, they're definitely going to return, right? But so it really facts specific in terms of this risk. But how can you prove your ties? How can you prove that it's a legit marriage? Maybe it's a month, but you guys have known each other for quite some time, and you can definitely demonstrate that. So there could be some risk, right? Because it could impact your ties. If you have a spouse and children stay in your country, most likely going to go back, as opposed to if the spouse and children come with you to Canada, right? Well, anyways, that's in the view of IRCC when they're looking at temporary intent, but we'll see what will happen. Abu Muhammad says, any chance 475 for July? I say yes, absolutely. This is just based on 5,500 individuals every 2 weeks. We could hit 475 by April. This is assuming the draws don't stop. This is assuming they take the same amount of people, right? But I think based on right now, it's possible. But don't quote me on this. Again, just speculation based on calculations with how many people inside the pool right now. All right. Sabira says, hello, since last April, I haven't got my visa yet. I applied last April. So we're talking about COVID applications. Your application could still be in that COVID pile. They could be in the new application, depending on the visa office is, right? So I did say that we're seeing a lot of application these days in 4 to 6 months. And again, that's just based on my experience, but the processing times on IRCC webpage is still, as we saw, in the high, 20, 30 months, depending on the type of express entry application. Well, there we go, guys. Now we're in 15 minutes. I don't know how many questions we answered, but I think it's the first time that I've actually just pushed through and done every single question. I don't think I skipped any questions. Oh, look, there's a last question here. It's about Quebec. It's going to be easy. We don't actually practice in Quebec. We're not licensed and competent to do Quebec applications. We do everything immigration-wise outside of Quebec. If someone in Quebec received FSW ITA, how to demonstrate intent to reside outside Quebec? Is it possible to get a transfer letter from employer? Yeah, so, okay, not a Quebec question. So, this comes up once in a while, and how would I say this? Express Entry is outside Quebec, right? It's specifically for people to immigrate outside of Quebec. Quebec has their own program called the Certificat d'Acceptation du Québec, right? Sélection du Québec, CSQ. I would not submit an Express Entry application if I was living inside Quebec. Now, I'm sure you've heard about people getting, their permanent residency inside Quebec and whatnot, but I would definitely encourage you to move outside Quebec, have a lease outside Quebec, update your driver's license outside Quebec, transfer employers outside Quebec, and really get outside of Quebec if you're interested in Express Entry, because like either you do it now or you're going to have to do it when you get your PR, right? I would not get your Express Entry PR and stay residing inside Quebec. Now, how do you demonstrate this intent? So yeah, transfer letter could be helpful, signing a lease, right? For maybe a month from now, from 2 months from now, showing that you're taking this seriously to move outside of Quebec, or just moving outside of Quebec before you submit your application, right? Is going to be quite important. But yeah, not something that I recommend applying for Express Entry within Quebec, because it comes with that risk of some visa officers might accept it, some might not accept it. What you think is sufficient to show you're never going to go back to Quebec, the visa officer could disagree with you. You're getting into what one person thinks A, another person might think B. So is it worth it to take that risk? You have to move outside of Quebec eventually. Why not move out before your application? But again, I'm just giving you legal information. If you want legal advice and, say, okay, this is what I recommend you do, how you should do it, what documents you should provide. Oh, by the way, make sure to include XYZ. Book a consult with me. So there we go, guys. Oh my God, questions are pouring in. I almost answered all the questions. They keep coming in. If someone has a closed work permit with the conditions include specific locations. Oh no. So there we go. So this is why I said that you should probably book a consult, because I don't know your whole situation. And there we go, right? So no, you cannot work right outside of Quebec if your work permit specific, if you have a closed work permit for an employer with a specific region, right? So yeah, now it gets a little bit complicated. So do book a consult. And maybe in your case, it's reasonable to show that your employer has a spot reserved for you in Toronto and you're getting out of Quebec as soon as you can. But what documents can you provide and how can you explain this in your application? We could definitely help with that. The questions, You're competing with yourself to answer all the questions. I am. No, they keep rolling in. Listen, 5 minutes, and then I got to go. Hello, Cedric, received ITA. Which documents could be accepted for work experience? For work experience when current job is not resigned? Yeah, I don't know if you asked this question last time again. Just get a reference letter. Talk to your employer. Say, listen, I'm applying for Express Entry. I need a reference letter. Right? You can have here, it can be your current job status. You're currently employed, right? Ashitov is currently employed. He's started working in May 2020. He's a website designer. He does tests, meets with clients, invoices clients, super helpful. He's great. Current job status, right? He doesn't have to be from a past employer. You don't have to quit your job. A lot of people do this. They provide, even if a current job, right? They say it's the current job. You don't have to resign from your job, right? And this is what you have to do. This is called the completeness check. Super, super important. What are the changes for open work permit for spouses or post-graduation work permit holders? Oh, good question. There's a temporary public policy that was just announced. Temporary public policy, spousal open work permits. So it changes open work permits under, no, this is not it. So many temporary public policies here. There are changes. I really don't mean to skip this question. Can I find a temporary public policy, spousal open work permit, January 2023. There we go. So this is what it looks like. Employers and temporary work to benefit from family work permits to address labor shortages. So here we talk about the actual changes, right? So through a 2-year measure, so for until 2025, Canada will expand eligibility work permits for spouses and working age children through a phased approach for all workers at skill levels, right? So this is to do with workers
at all skill levels. So it doesn't do with non-workers, right? So students, right? This doesn't impact that from what this is telling us. This would families of workers in healthcare, trade, and hospitality, for example. As a result of this approach, estimate that family members of some 200,000 foreign workers could begin working in Canada, offering great opportunity for both foreign workers seeking to work in Canada and employers addressing their labor shortage needs. So here we go. Here's the three phases. Here how it's going to work. So enable family members of workers coming to Canada through the high wage stream. This is an LMIA or the International Mobility Program. It's a beast of its own to apply for an open work permit. So take a look at that to see if your current work permit is either a high wage LMIA or within the International Mobility Program. And then phase 2, it's going to do with low wage LMIAs. And then here it's going to do with phase 3 to do with agricultural partners. So it might not apply to you, again, just workers, some very specific scenarios. On this note, guys, thank you so much for joining me. It's going to be an end to the live Q&A. Mark and Alicia, I don't know if they're going to be doing a live Q&A. They usually also do them on Thursdays, a few hours after me. So if I didn't get to your question, please join Alicia and Mark for the next live Q&A. I'm just trying to take a peek here. I think they're going to be here in about about 4 hours. Have a live Q&A. 4 hours, yeah. They're going to have a live Q&A. So ask them all the questions that I didn't answer today. And guys, have a wonderful weekend. Good luck with Express Entry. Good luck with your applications. Reach out if you guys have questions on the consultations. We'd love to work with you to make it happen. And wishing you all a wonderful week ahead. Enjoy the weather. It's a little bit getting cold in Canada. Think about doing stuff outside, learning how to skate. Take proper precautions. Go snowboarding and skiing. Obviously take lessons. Take care and have yourself a wonderful, wonderful weekend. See you later, guys.